Two of the key factors in personal productivity are how you spend your time and with whom. So today we are going to talk about making the most of your personal productivity toolkit through utilizing MyAnalytics and Cortana from the Microsoft 365 suite. Hi, my name is Nathan Austin. I'll be presenting today, and producing behind the scenes is Stephanie Kingston from MyTech Partners. Throughout the session today, we have the Q&A panel open, so by all means, please, as we go through, add questions to the Q&A panel, and we will interject them at the end, or Stephanie might be able to answer them offline. But in the meantime, they'll have about 30 minutes of content today, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. All right, so what are we here to talk about today? We call this your personal productivity toolkit for a couple reasons, because this is really about the individual. The majority of information we're going to cover today is about the individual gaining insights into how they can be more productive, have better focus, maybe have better work-life balance, and some of the tools that are available to help you with some of that insights and research to make some of those decisions. So today, the purpose of this session is really just to increase awareness around what personal productivity resources exist that you might not have even realized are there, but they actually are kind of cool. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about and identify some of the common productivity challenges that face individuals and teams, but primarily individuals, that can help them, that we all face, and there's some tools and ways in which we can help each other through that. We are then also going to do a brief demonstration, show you a few of the different ways in which you might be able to interact with your personal productivity toolkit, as we call it. And finally, we do have some recommended next steps if you are a leader, supervisor, manager, or as an individual, that you can take next steps that you can take to, take some of this information and put it into action. But really quick, 1 minute about MyTech. We are a small, medium business technology consulting firm. We've been in this business for about 20 years. And over those 20 years, we've learned that there's developed a proven technology, strategic technology plan that we know can achieve consistent results for our clients. It's not the only technology plan. It's not the only strategy. It's just the one that we know actually really works. Ultimately, our goal for you is to help working together with you is to remove those IT challenges so that you can focus on serving your customers better and being more adaptable to the other business challenges that we all inevitably face. Together with that, our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. If you'd like to learn more about that, by all means, raise your hand. We'd love to have a conversation, but that is not why you're here today. So let's move on. I like this quote because this is something that is really near and dear to my heart. It's something that most people struggle with, and I think the key message that I have learned, hopefully over the years of me being in business and working with team members and coaching and collaborating with team members, is that productivity and time management are not inherent skills. They can be learned, and as leaders, we should help our team and coach those skills, even though we as leaders ourselves oftentimes struggle and have plenty of room for improvement relative to productivity and time management. But I like the idea that productivity is not an accident. It's about being intentional about this. And so a lot of the information we're going to share today are just giving you easy, regular glimpses into being intentional about productivity and being intentional about time management and being intentional, that I haven't mentioned yet, about just simple accountability. When you said you're going to do something, or if you're trying to work on an initiative and you have deadlines, getting those done on time. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today will help solve or address some of those issues. So what are some of the common productivity and time management challenges that people face? How many of you, if you're all in the room with me today, I would ask you to be brave and raise your hand when I ask these questions or I go through these items. So you can virtually raise your hand if you like, although you're not on camera. But just be introspective and be intellectually honest with yourself. But how many feel that you might spend too much time in meetings? So that's definitely a challenge. And sometimes being in those meetings prevents you from actually getting the work done and the action items that you need to do that come out of those meetings. So that's some stuff we're going to talk about today. How many of you feel like you allow yourself to be disrupted and interrupted by email? we will see later that I am one of those people, and I will show you. I'm going to show you this information about me. So I'm going to be practicing one of our values of practice confidence and humility, because I have room for improvement based on the information that I've done in research in order to provide this session today or deliver the session today. So we'll show that later. How many of you feel like you don't have enough focus time to actually accomplish the tasks that you're assigned and that you're responsible for doing? I know I feel a lot of people have that challenge. And especially for those leaders who like to burn the midnight oil, how many of you are doing after-hours communications? And of course, that sometimes and conversely affects your ability to disconnect and recharge, but it might not just be affecting you, it might be affecting your team. You know, one of the things I know that I have been guilty of, and I am guilty of from time to time, that I try not to communicate after hours, but sometimes I do, and sometimes I try. And there's some ways where you can set email delivery. There's some cool functionality in here that can help you do that. You can do that in Outlook too, but sometimes on your phone that's hard. But anyway, there's some tips and tricks about not only how you yourself can make sure you're disconnecting it to recharge, but how that might affect your team. And then one of the things that I feel about time management, there's actually some interesting insights in here as far as like, are you being reactive or proactive? The meetings that you hold, how many of them are actually happening urgently? Like you only planned ahead like an hour or so, or how much of it is into the future where you're actually proactively engaging your time and using your time to its advantage? So the reactive versus proactive nature of time management. And then, as I mentioned earlier, individual and team accountability. So there's, again, most of the content we're going to cover today and discuss is really about individual accountability and individual insights. But there are areas where this is going to be evolving. So as supervisors, managers, and leaders, that you can be a part of the equation and help your team with this, with productivity and time management. All right. There's a couple public service announcements, prerequisites that I like to make sure I cover whenever we touch on specific programs or features and licensing. So first of all, none of this will work if your organization's email is not in Microsoft 365. If your email is on a local Exchange server, which most small businesses don't have that today, but there's still a good handful of them out there. But if your organizational email needs to be in Microsoft 365 in order for this to work. So that's a prerequisite. Nearly every plan, Microsoft 365 plan, as long as you're not just using the email only SKU, for instance, if you're just hosting your email, this isn't available to you. But any of the plans that has a bundle of licenses and subscriptions, like the business plans, the enterprise plans, et cetera, all of them include MyAnalytics. So the insights by MyAnalytics that we're going to talk about today. There are a couple features that we'll touch on that are only available in what they call MyAnalytics Full, which has in addition to, it's kind of an add-on or a couple additional features on top of the insights by MyAnalytics. And I missed typing a my in there. And we also have some reference links that we'll share as a follow-up, so that you can read these yourself if you want more information, and you can dig into some of the details. But those are a couple of public service announcements. The one last one, as I mentioned, the majority of the content we're going to be talking about today is really focused on the individuals. However, Microsoft is evolving what they're going to call a leadership page. I actually don't have that to show you today. It's not in our tenant. It has not been rolled out to us. So as this is the information right off of Microsoft's website. And again, we'll have a link to this page as well in the follow-up email. But the leadership page, which will be on the MyAnalytics dashboard, which I'll show you later, it's in preview status. The other thing that's important to note is that your Azure Active Directory, if you're even using that, needs to make sure that when you're configuring it, if you have a team of people that report to you, it has to be set up that way in Azure Active Directory. So the leadership page, if and when you choose to use it, and when it rolls out, is not going to be valuable unless you're also doing some of those things behind the scene. So that's one of the things I'd like to mention, that there are some prerequisites to make that happen. And there's some cool things as far as if you're a leader of a team, that this will give you some insight in how you might be able to coach and help your team with time management and productivity. Because ultimately as leaders, that's our job, is to be coaches. So, but that is not out at the moment yet, at least it's in rollout right now. So you might actually see it, because sometimes Microsoft rolls out to different tenants, but right now we actually don't see it yet. So I just wanted to provide a little insight to the future, but everything else we're going to be talking about today, other than this brief heads up, is really about the individual. So let's dig in to some of the demonstration of what I'm going to talk about. So there's mainly 3 different ways that you and your team, or you as an individual, will most likely interact with these capabilities. And we talk about MyAnalytics and Cortana. And the reason why we reference Cortana in there is because Cortana is basically the personal assistant, kind of like, I probably shouldn't even say it, but like Amazon Alexa, right? It's basically kind of the digital assistant, and so some of the information comes from Cortana, but really everything. In fact, if you even do searches for Cortana relative to MyAnalytics, they're closely related. The core information is in MyAnalytics. Cortana is just an extra piece, and I'll illustrate that by the first way in which your team has maybe already been exposed to this, or that your team will be exposed to it in the future. So I'm going to pull up Cortana does, and this is a real email that came to me. Again, it was about a month ago. I picked a few that I think were good illustrations, but I get a daily briefing. Again, your daily briefing here from Cortana. And this gives me some information that I had a meeting, is just prepare for today's meetings. So it gives me a heads up. Here's a couple of meetings that I have going on. If these are, what are some things I might need to do in order to prepare for these meetings? And then there's other teams meetings that are here. So that's one of the things that just gives me insight as to preparing for the meetings. If I have meetings on my schedule, and I can hit view all meetings. I'm not going to click on that at the moment, but I can also click into these as we speak. The other thing, so there's another daily briefing that I pulled out. It says, hey, make today count. Again, prepare for today's meetings. There's a training session that I was scheduled for that day. And then this is the to-do icon, if you may be familiar with that. And it says, here's some of the commitments. And so, for instance, Tracy is one of the vendor partners we work with. It kind of said, hey, 4 days ago, you said, thanks for the reply. I'll send a calendar invitation. It was just kind of a reminder that, did I do that? And then same thing with John. John's another vendor partner we work with. I said, yeah, let's do 2:30 on Thursday. I'll send that calendar invite. These are just some interesting emails that came through that are just reminders for me as far as like, hey, here's some time, here's some commitments and things that you said you're going to do that are in your kind of your daily briefing. So those are some interesting ways that it starts giving you some insights and some opportunities, in fact, to take action if need be. Now I'm going to move over to, so that's the Cortana side. That's why I wanted to show that. This is from Cortana or Cortana. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how Microsoft prefers us to pronounce that. But this is something that you get daily. I have a bunch of these every day that's different every day depending on what's going on every day. And sometimes it even asks me to say, hey, do you want to book focus time? So there's some cool things that you can get from Cortana. And I'll show you a little bit of that as we move along here. So let's go on to the MyAnalytics. So these are weekly emails that Microsoft has, and this is where, again, like I said, I'm going to try and practice the both confidence and humility as you're going to start seeing into my productivity habits and where I have opportunities to improve. So, for instance, your month in review. So this basically goes over the last 4 weeks. 86% of the time, on average, in a typical work week, you are collaborating. That's either via email, chats, or meetings. If I want to discover more, I can click into that dashboard. So it's going to go to the dashboard. I'm not going to click into that now because I'll show you the dashboard here a little bit later. But then it also gives me some insight into meeting habits. Out of 95 meetings, okay, interesting. I attended 95 meetings in the last 4 weeks. It's a lot of meetings. What are the type of meetings did not overlap, et cetera. And my 96% of my time was during working hours. So at the very least, I'm working during working hours. So that's good. Communication habits, how did you stay connected? Gives you insights into emails that were sent, read, chats, and calls. I joined all my meetings on time, so that's nice. Thank you for that little pep talk. But the problem here that I see is that 14% of my time available for focus is probably not enough. And that's one of the things I know I need to work on. The other challenge that I have that it's giving me a little insight into is that one quiet day in the last 4 weeks. And that means there's only one day out of the last 4 weeks where I didn't check my email or wasn't responding to emails or wasn't communicating on Teams or something like that. So that's also an area where I have an opportunity to improve. And then it gives me some insight into who are my active collaborators on our team. So that's just one example. And this is a collaboration edition. So there's 4 different insights emails that you get, and they're 1 a week. So for instance, here's a focus edition. So the collaboration and focus edition are very closely related in the fact that this one, it talks about the collaboration time and your focus time. And so, hey, there's a new way you can automatically schedule focus time. So one of the things I can do is I could just click right here and I could basically build in or have MyAnalytics and Cortana automatically schedule focus time on my calendar. It will literally seek out little spots on my calendar and will book focus time for me to make sure that I have time to get things done. Again, that's a really easy way to do it. And I'll show you when we get into the dashboard, there's a way where you can build out what that schedule looks like, tell the frequency, and it'll naturally find time for you. And even as your calendar evolves, it's not just a one-time thing. It's continually seeking and trying to find focus time based on the preferences and the requirements you set for it. Set forth. Again, the past 4 weeks, I didn't have enough time to focus. It gives it by week. I can explore that. This is another insight that I thought was, as I mentioned, if you're ever disrupted by email, this one says, hey, during working hours, you read over half your emails within 30 minutes. Maybe I should not do that. Maybe I should be less distracted by my email and be more focused in the meeting I'm in or the phone call I'm on. And so this gives me some insights in that I can probably do a better job there. Again, 85% collaboration time, 0 quiet days. That 1 day went away, and collaborators. So that's the focus time. I'm going to keep moving. Then there's the network edition, which gets into a little bit more of your network of people with whom you're collaborating. And so with this past 4 weeks, there were 71 active collaborators. There are 24 new people that connected to my network. And again, this pulls up right to the dashboard. Gives me my top collaborators, the people with whom I worked with the most and communicated with the most. And then important people to suggestions, like if there's people that I want to flag. When you flag people as important, it gives a kind of an indicator to Cortana that, hey, make sure that if there are emails that are unread from these people, could you remind me? Or if there's actions that you committed to in a communication with these people, remind me. So it gives you some additional reminders by just flagging key folks as important, such as you not wanting to miss their email, not wanting to misread their email, or not wanting to miss an action item for those folks. So there's some ways you can do that, and I'll show you that later. But this gives you some, again, it gives you a weekly summary where you might be able to say, hey, here's the suggestions, and I can go choose to do that. Again, focus time, collaboration time. Moving on, the last one is your well-being edition. So all of these gave you a touch on nearly every one of these sections. But again, well-being is really focused on are you disconnecting? Are you taking time for you to recharge? This could also be, are you communicating after hours? Again, I know that I'm guilty of checking my email because I like to just keep my email as clean as possible, and just like even if it's deleting emails or reading newsletters or whatever those things are. But I think I can tell you that I'm sure my wife would appreciate if I spent less time checking my email and Teams messages and more time disconnecting. So that's something that I need to work on. But this is definitely, it kind of throws it in my face because otherwise I don't maybe think I'm doing this, but I definitely have some room for improvement here. So that gives me some insight into how I might be able to be better when I'm at work by making sure I disconnect when I'm not at work. And then it says, what are some of the things that are impacting your quiet time? Rarely meetings. Again, they're rarely happening after hours, but it's usually emails and then chats and calls. So this is really, emails is my guilty note here. Again, it just gives me some additional insights, so on and so forth. I have had some additional time to focus lately, but you get the idea. So that's the first way. The first way, as I mentioned, is basically via the email summaries that are automatically sent. So your team is probably, if your team has these licenses, you're probably already receiving these emails, the Cortana daily briefing and the MyAnalytics weekly summary to give you insight. So now I'm going to show you the second way. The second way is in Outlook. So I'm actually having this is my demo account. So there's not a lot of data in here, which is why I've been showing you emails from my account, because it actually shows some real data. But in the demo account, I will show you, if I click on, there's an Insights add-in, and you need to have probably one of the most current versions of Outlook. There's some specific details around having the current iteration, et cetera, but or what versions of Outlook you need. But as long as you're on a Microsoft 365 Outlook version that continually updates is updated to the current release and version, you'll have the ability to do insights. You can click on that. So this is the MyAnalytics Insights icon, as you can see this over here, and it starts checking for insights, and it just starts popping options and ideas here. This feature right here, public service announcement, is part of the MyAnalytics full. So you only get that if you have like an E5 series SKU, as I mentioned earlier. But this basically, if I click try it out, and then if I say how it works, basically this means that delayed emails will be delivered at the scheduled time, even when you close Outlook. So that's a difference versus scheduling a delivery delay, which you can do in Outlook because your Outlook has to be open in order for the email to send. So this doesn't work that way. The other thing I like about this is that it works to align with the recipient's working hours. So for those of you who might, I know several of our clients work with folks that are that travel internationally or that are based internationally or travel. So this will work to send those emails during the recipient's working hours versus what maybe your working hours are. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The other thing that allows me to do is if I want to set lunch hours, like, hey, it'd be really nice. Maybe I'm bad at making sure I have time for lunch. So this will automatically schedule lunch hours from 12 to noon, from noon to 1 whenever I can in my time. Do I want to turn on focus plans? It'll give me time for focusing. I'll show you how that turns on later as I get to the dashboard. But again, this is focus time every day. Prepare for your meeting. It says, hey, I've got one new meeting in the next day. This is the one I've got coming up. Everyone's attending. Do I want to book any time to prepare? So I can just click really quick, hey, I want to prepare for that. So some cool insights as far as just some quick ways for you to, I could just click book with one click and it schedules something on my calendar as opposed to me having to go to my calendar and intentionally do it. I'm working within my same, within the same few clicks. Again, booking time to focus and scheduling lunchtime. So there's some cool insights that are right here and available in Outlook. And so this might be one of the ways in which you choose to engage outside of the emails, the automated emails that come. But the last way, and probably the way that I find that's a little bit more user-friendly, is I'm going to pull over the MyAnalytics dashboard. And so I'll show you how to get to that. If you just go to office.com, which is one of the common ways, if you go to office.com, this is your portal. And then if you just click on the app launcher, if you don't see MyAnalytics here, you can click on the all apps and you'll see MyAnalytics in alphabetical order. So I'll click on MyAnalytics and that'll open up this page here. So, so this is my dashboard. And there's some videos and some tours. So there's some things that if you're trying to work here, there's some additional content here that Microsoft provides naturally. But each one of these, I can either navigate by clicking on the side here, focus, well-being, or network. But again, this is an area that I have an opportunity for improve. If I only allow 11% of my time for focus, that is probably not enough time, or I'm having to spend a lot of time after hours working in order to accomplish my tasks. So if I want to make more time to focus, I'm going to click on this. And so what I did is I actually went in here and configured this already, but I'm going to go ahead and click on plan configuration. And what I can do is I can schedule my work week, say, hey, maybe my week is Sunday to Thursday, not Monday through Friday, but I can choose my start time and end time. I'm actually going to change this because, sometimes when by the time I'm getting up and ready and by the time I get home, so I'm going to do 7:15 to 5:45. So I'm going to change that. I'm actually going to update that for myself. You can change your time zone if possible, but then this is where you can build your plan and you can turn off your plan or customize your plan, but this is where you can leave the plan. So how much focus time you like to schedule every day? 1, 2, or 4 hours. It recommends 2, and then you can choose, well, which one's better for you? Are you better to have focus time in the morning or the afternoon? So choose that. I choose morning, and do not schedule focus time earlier than 8, which I might change that, but I'm going to keep that right there for now. And then the other thing I like is that silence Teams notifications during focus time. It's going to automatically silence those disruptors and those interrupters for me. The other thing is saying note that you can set priority contacts in Teams to ensure so that there's those important people, those priority contacts. There's a way where you can make sure that you allow them to interrupt your focus time if those are the important messages from those important people that you designate. So I thought that was an interesting variable. So again, saving changes back to default. So you can also do the config settings down here. When you hit that, that's where you actually get to this time, but you can also get to it from the focus plan, again, from up here in the focus and click on plan configuration, or you can click on down here, config settings, and that's where you can pull up this information to adjust this. And if you want to turn that off, you can just leave the plan. But If you notice, as I go back to focus, it actually at a glance has identified that there's it's found focus time for the next 9 days, which is what I've asked it to do. So 9 out of 10 days booked. There's sometimes if there's conflicts, it'll ask me to review those. And I actually had a couple conflicts. I adjusted my calendar, and it then automatically went back in and put in some focus time that I didn't because when I adjusted my calendar. So there's some kind of cool ways there. And then again, collaboration versus interruption time. It tells me here that I'm distracted by email, and it says, hey, what are some suggestions to maximize focus? Try checking your inbox once an hour. You know, maybe that's something I need to do is block off my inbox better. So those are just little insights that you can gain from this. If I go back to well-being, it also gives me insight that here's a huge opportunity that I have for improvement is, and again, I think these are just nice. This is just private to you as an individual, by the way. This is information that you only see. You can share it with your manager or leader if you choose, but otherwise this is really for individual insight, as I mentioned. But I have not been good about quiet days. I need to do a better job of that, and it tells me why, again, my email is my problem. And so then I can say, is this helpful or not? So there's some cool insights that you can gain from all these different variables. And then, of course, it tells you who your network collaborators are. It gives you different insights as far as how many active collaborators, who are you spending the most amount of time with. And this is also where you get to explore and designate whether people are your important contacts. Again, that's manage this list of people you want to get reminded of tasks and unread emails from. So if they're sending you emails and you missed reading them, or if there's a task that you might have committed to in an email correspondence that you may have missed, this is what Cortana is going to focus on in some of those daily briefings to make sure you don't miss them. And you could just search and add people from your team and just flag them. And these are the people that I work with the most on our team. And so those are the people that I flagged as important to make sure that I don't miss following up with them. All right, and then it suggests some other people that I might be able to note. So, and then finally, collaboration. It's very similar to network, but it does give you some insight into your meeting habits. It actually gives you an interesting, so it gives you kind of a bar graph summary here. But if you actually want to know, like, well, how many times, where was it? Were online meetings joined on time? If you go down, it tells you 86% work, great. But if you want to find the details, you just toggle this back and forth to the list, and it basically tells you which meetings that you had and which ones were attended on time, which ones might not have been, et cetera. So it gives you all that. So I think that's interesting. And finally, some summaries if I want to be really, it tells me when do I send and communicate the most. Again, I wanted to use my data because there's data here versus the demo tenant, but sent 212, read 2,300, and had 237 chats and calls in the last 4 weeks. So this gives me some insight into when I do that, time of day. For instance, emails sent, et cetera. Again, if this might help, I've found that I am more productive in the morning with some of that focus time, but I also this might give me some insight into where I might be more productive. If I'm finding that I'm responding less or more in certain times, maybe I need to schedule my focus time in the afternoon because I find that I'm communicating with my team more in the morning. So just again, there's lots of different ways to use this information, but it also gives you insights into research, for time management and productivity improvements. So that's pretty much it. Those are the 3 ways. The last thing I'll show you here is if you happen to have the Edge browser, you can install, instead of having to go to office.com and install MyAnalytics, one of the little tips that I like, if this is something you plan on using on a regular basis, is if you come up to the little breadcrumbs up here, and I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to go down here and say, go down to apps and install this site as an app. So I'm going to take analytics and MyAnalytics. Yep, I'm going to install it. So now it makes it an app that is basically a browser. But then what I can do is I can pin it to my desktop. So I'm actually going to quickly escape out of my PowerPoint presentation here because then what I can do is MyAnalytics is down here. I'm actually going to right click and I'm just going to pin it to my taskbar. So now this will be basically a web browser launch that one click to launch my MyAnalytics dashboard. So if that's something that you would like to be able to do, if that's something that you again, it's a simple way you can do that using the Edge browser. So I'll pull the PowerPoint back up here and I'll get that going live, forgive me. So a couple tips. So if you're a leader, manager, or supervisor, sometimes, or coach. A lot of those are synonymous terms. I'm not trying to distinguish between one or the other. I like to use them synonymously, but you might call yourself something different. But here's some tips, and this is based on, this is our philosophy, MyTech's philosophy of how we believe that managers, leaders, and supervisors should engage their team. If you have a team member that can improve their time management or productivity, or they struggle with time management, hopefully this is something that you can share to give them some insight around how they might be able to learn their own habits, learn their own gaps and where they might have opportunities so they can improve. I would encourage you, if you know that there's a team member that's struggling, and we can all improve, even if they're not struggling, there's room for improvement. Maybe this is one of the things you open up in a one-on-one, one of your next one-on-one meetings or team meetings that you may have. Just talk about this and share awareness if people aren't looking at it. Encourage people to schedule focus time. Encourage folks to not communicate after hours, etc. Maybe there's some insight that they can have there. The other thing I would say is that I hope that no one would ever use this information as a penalty or as a weapon. Hopefully this information is really used to help coach and improve just behavior. Again, time management and productivity is not an inherent skill, in my opinion. It is something that is gradually learned over time, and it can be taught. And it's I believe it's, as leaders, managers, and supervisors, it's our responsibility to coach that and help encourage the positive behaviors that can have a good outcome on accountability, time management, and ultimately a work-life balance and a successful career. Finally, I would say, you as a leader, manager, and supervisor, as I mentioned, I've realized doing some of the research and making sure that I've dug into this to present this session today, that I have a lot of room for improvement. So those are some of the things that I'm going to work on. But how can you, as a manager, leader, or supervisor, or coach, improve your work-life balance and make sure that you're not having a negative impact on your team's work-life balance? And what can you do to help support that? So those are just some insights there. As individuals, hey, look, identify where you can improve your time management or work-life balance. There's opportunities here. There's insight. There's got to be at least one thing that will come out of these insights if you just pay attention to them, even if it's just on a weekly basis when those emails come out, that can help you improve your time management or work-life balance and productivity. I would encourage you to say, what are some of the small steps you can take within the next 24 to 48 hours? Maybe just open up the MyAnalytics dashboard, take a look at some of those details. Maybe it's turning on the focus time, so you make sure you're blocking out that time proactively. Maybe you're just trying to set up the important ones so you can kind of check out after hours if you struggle with that. And raise a hand if there's anything that we might be able to help with. If you want to dig in deeper to how this or any of the other tools in Microsoft 365 might be able to help you, raise a hand. We'd love to have a conversation. And if you're not able to do that, if that's not the right time for you, join us for future virtual events. We're about ready to publish all of our events for Q2. In fact, they will be published by the time you get the follow-up email coming up, most likely tomorrow, as well as we have Power User Group sessions at the end of April and the end of June. Join us for those as well. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I really like to open it up for questions. For those of you who have to sign off now, thank you very much for your time. But for those of you who can stick around, I'd love to open it up for questions, and we'll dig in and maybe poke around and see what we can learn together. So Stephanie, let's open it up for questions.
Thanks, Nate. We did have one question come through, and I know you showed how to download it as an app towards the end, but they're asking if you can show again how to access the MyAnalytics page.
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to open up just the regular web browser. Of course, it installed it as an app, so now I need to open it up as a different. I need to open up a different window. Okay, there we go. Just opening up one of my favorite tools. It's if you're wondering if you have access to any Microsoft 365 tools, applications, etc., Office.com is the answer. Go to Office.com. Again, I've got it saved here, but you can just type it in, Office.com. If I could spell, and it'll ask you to log in. Now ours is set to single sign-on, so it's already logging in, right? But basically, you can scroll down. There's this little icon down here that is unique. That actually, by the way, I think it's usually it's not down there, but it's down here. You can click on that, and that'll basically pull up all the applications that you have access to in the environment. You can also, there's shortcuts along the side, but these are like your most commonly used ones. I notice MyAnalytics is here. The other way is that you can come to the little waffle up here, and you can click on all apps here, and then it will list all of your applications in alphabetical order, and you can click on the MyAnalytics. So again, MyAnalytics is here, it's here, or it's in the, if you happen to use it recently or frequently, it'll be here too. So there's multiple ways, but basically go to office.com and you'll be able to find access to the MyAnalytics dashboard. Again, it'll start, the dashboard starts off with any of the four kind of quadrants here. And this is really about, as I started the session with, it's really about the two key factors, not necessarily the major or the only factors, but two key factors in time management and productivity is how do you spend your time and with whom? And so that's a lot of what this analytics and data is coming from, is how are you spending your time and with whom are you spending your time? And that's really what this is focusing on. And you can get into each one of these modules here or along the columns here along the side. So it's probably a little more than you asked, but hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Nate. We had another question come through asking if DISTI group emails count as one email sent.
That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that question. I wonder if there's a way to look at that. Distracted by email. No, that's not it. Where was it? Was my collaboration one? Maybe it's my collaboration one. Email sent. Can I click on this? Well, it doesn't allow me. It doesn't give me ability to drill into that. That's why I was wondering if maybe it might give me the ability to drill. I'm trying to double click there and it's not, or double click on this. It's not a dynamic thing for me to look into and see, well, what are those emails? I'm assuming that would be one email because it knows I don't think it's counting the number of, it might count the people that are on emails relative to your collaborators, right? When it talks about your number of collaborators, it probably is adding the multiple people from the list of collaborators. But if you're just sending a distribution email or it's just one email to a bunch of people, it's probably only counting as one email. It's smart enough to know that, I would imagine. So I don't know definitively, and I don't know how to drill into it, but that would be my guess based on how this is tracked.
Awesome. There's no further questions right now.
Gotcha. One of the other things that I didn't note because I was running out of time, but I like that it gives me some other insights like, hey, it says, hey, Jason Root, he's the general manager of our Minnesota branch. He said, last week you spent 3.5 hours basically in meetings with Jason Root. Maybe I should look at that differently. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to consolidate those meetings or spend a different way this time. Also, I like that it talks about active collaborators, external, new collaborators, and important collaborators. So as I mentioned, those important folks, it gives me an insight into how much time I spent with them. It gives me a map view or a list view by toggling that here. So just gives you some interesting insight there as far as your active collaborators, total time with them, response times, etc. Just again, interesting data. I don't know how I would necessarily use that, but I do like knowing it is interesting to see, that this makes sense that these are the people that I work with the most from my team. And then this again also makes sense. So, but I like the ability to add these folks. Oh, and one last thing I wanted to show. I'm going to actually pull up Teams here. So if you wanted to, if you've ever, for instance, I'm using my demo environment right now, so showing that I'm presenting. But one of the things that if you're doing this, there's this little note whenever you're like in presenting or do not disturb mode. It says your status is set to do not disturb because I'm presenting. You only get notifications for urgent messages and from your priority contacts. So one of the things I just started doing recently is clicking up here, change settings. So marking them in the analytics part as important means that emails and correspondence from emails that are from those important people get flagged. But if you want to do it from a Teams perspective, this is where you can actually, your do not disturb, you can manage priority access. So if I click on this, I can add, so let's say I want to make sure that anytime Stephanie sends me an email, that she's on my priority list, or anytime Gerald sends me an email, he's our CTO, that Gerald is now, so these two are now on my priority access. So if I'm in do not disturb or in presentation mode, I will get important messages or messages that come from them. So that's an interesting way where they're different settings, they're different important, for instance, the important collaborators, when I come down here, this is my, oops, sorry, clicked on the wrong one. This is where I can set my important ones. And these are, again, manage list of people you want to get reminded of, tasks and unread emails. So this is really more tasks than emails. But in Teams, that's where you can actually establish up here is if you're on Do Not Disturb, this is where you can choose who you want to be able to interrupt you, if that's the case. So I just learned that recently as I was digging into some of this stuff as far as how they're different settings. So again, just be aware of that. Pause one last time for questions before we adjourn.
No questions, Nate.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, this session is near and dear to my heart. Many of you may have known, if you've listened to these sessions over the last year or so, that I actually engaged with a productivity consultant to help me, and I obviously have still room to improve, but I engaged with a productivity consultant to help me with this. Being productive and being accountable and being able to have work-life balance has helped me keep my sanity as far as engaging and making sure that I can be there for my team and hopefully be productive when I'm at work. And so I really appreciate that Microsoft is doing this and giving you some insights that if you were to try and find out this information yourself, it would take way more hours than I think it would save. So it's nice that you're getting some of this insight by just you doing what you do. You're going to get insight into your habits and behaviors that you might be able to adjust to improve your productivity, time management, and hopefully your well-being. Thanks for attending, and take care.